Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. And in this video I am here in the XR2. And I have a low Earth orbit with a periapsis of about 240 kilometers and an apoapsis of about 330 kilometers. But we do have a bit of a problem here, and that problem is that we are entirely out of main fuel, and we only have 1% remaining in our RCS. Now with that amount of RCS, we basically only have enough fuel to do a couple of rotations and maybe a kill rotation, and that's about it. With that amount of RCS, we wouldn't even be able to bring our periapsis down to the point where we could re-enter the atmosphere and land with a dead stick landing. So in effect we are stranded in orbit, and to make matters worse, we only have 5 hours and 43 minutes of oxygen remaining, and of course when that runs out the crew will die. But we do have a way to resolve this. If you see here in map MFD, I have not one but 2 XR2s in orbit, so this is going to be a rescue mission. That's the point of this video. So we're going to have to select the other XR2, and you can see that this one is docked here at the ISS. So in order to rescue the other XR2, we're going to undock and go over there and either transfer enough fuel to it so that it can land, or we'll just bump it down ourselves once we get over there. Now the self-imposed rules that I have for this scenario are that I'm not allowed to refuel. Like right now I'm docked at the ISS, so if I wanted to, I could open the supply lines and get some additional fuel, and that would certainly make things easier, because then I could do a direct plane change and go over there and rescue the other XR2. But I don't want to do that, because I want to demonstrate, and something that we can do that will be a more fuel efficient way to get over to the other XR2. Well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's select align plane MFD and target the other XR2. And we can see here in align plane MFD that we are 22.45 degrees out of plane with that vessel. So the first question that we may have would be, do we have enough fuel to do a direct plane change if we wanted to do that? If I bring up burn time calculator, it tells us I have to undock first. When you're docked to the ISS, then this estimate total is wrong. So let me Control D.
Undocking confirmed.
Undocking confirmed.
And now I can see that I've got 1,623 meters per second worth of delta V using the main engine fuel. Now if I wanted to, I can transfer some or all of the RCS over to the main using the crossfeed, because these two types of fuels are compatible. So I want to know, if I needed some additional delta V, how much additional delta V would I have if I transferred the RCS over? And using this customized version of burn time calculator that Dimitris made, I can push this button here, ext, which is this extra fuel mass, and I can type in the RCS fuel, which is 736. And now I can see that with the combination of main fuel and RCS, I have a total delta V amount of 2,514 meters per second. So is that enough to do a plane change and still have enough fuel left over to rendezvous and then rescue the other XR2? Well, there's a couple of ways we can find out. This plane change maneuver will require a 115-second burn time. So one thing I can do to find out how much fuel that's going to cost is I can use the burn time calculator, and I can put in, you know, a number, for example, 2,000. And according to burn time calculator, 2,000 meters per second will require a burn time of about 92 seconds. So we're not quite there yet. We would need more than that. So let's try all of our main fuel. Let's put in 2514. Actually, I was reading the wrong number there. But if we used all of our main fuel, we would have a total burn time of 92 seconds. So that's not enough time to do this plane change. In other words, we would burn all of our fuel and we still would not have completed the plane change. We would be off by, you know, still 4 or 5 degrees or something like that. So not only would we not complete the plane change, but obviously we would not be able to rendezvous and rescue the XR2. Now there's a better way to figure this out, and this is something that Dimitris showed me. We can take the relative inclination and we can do a fairly simple calculation that will figure this out more precisely, and it's actually a little easier. So we take 22.45 and we divide that by 2, and then we press the send button on our scientific calculator, and then we take that times 2, and then once we have this number, I need to know my orbital velocity, and according to Orbit MFD, it's 7,700 meters per second. So I take this resulting number and I multiply it by 7,700, and I come up with 2,997.8. And what that tells me is that in order to complete just the plane change, I would need 2,997.8 meters per second worth of delta V just to do the plane change. And again, that doesn't include the rendezvous, and it doesn't include transferring fuel over to the other vessel so that it can then deorbit. So obviously we don't have enough fuel to do a direct plane change. We have to figure something else out. So that's 2 ways you can figure out how much fuel is needed for a plane change. You can use burn time calculator like I did here, and we can just put in the DV and just start guessing. So let's put in 2,800, and we can see a 2,800 meter per second burn time would be 102 seconds, and we're still not at that 115 second point. So let's use the number that our calculation gave us. And it's pretty close right there. So the calculation is more accurate, but using burn time calculator in this way, you can still get pretty close to it. So that's just two methods you can use to figure out what a plane change is going to cost. Okay, so what are we going to do then, since we can't do a plane change? At least we can't we can't burn a plane change. What we're going to do instead is an atmospheric surfing type of solution here. And the way this works is we're going to lower one side of our orbit so that it's down in the atmosphere. And then when we go around that side and the vessel gets into the atmosphere, we're going to be low enough in the atmosphere that we can actually get some steering. You know, we can bank the vessel, we can pitch the vessel so that we can actually steer enough to actually change our plane. But we're going to be high up enough in the atmosphere that we obviously we're not going to burn up, and we aren't going to lose a ton of orbital energy. Because if we got too low in the atmosphere, and let's set aside the issue of burning up, but if we got too low in the atmosphere and we used a bunch of our orbital energy, then our velocity would come down so much that we would then have to use a bunch of fuel to increase our velocity, and so we wouldn't get much of a savings. So there is a balance there where we can get just low enough to get all the steering that we need, but we're still high enough that we're conserving as much of our orbital energy as possible. That's what we're going to do. Now the way this works, I'm coming around here to the descending node, and when I get to the descending node, I want to do
rotation,
a retrograde burn. So let me get in the retrograde position. And I'm trying to be a little fuel conscious here, so I think I might be able to save a little bit of fuel by doing this manually instead of using the retrograde to get me in position, but now I'll use the retrograde. Actually, I guess it's going to roll me over, so maybe I didn't save much there. But what I want to do is I want to lower the other side of my orbit down so that it's touching the upper part of the atmosphere. And I want to do that right as I'm getting up to the descending node. And the reason I'm using this node instead of this one is because I started off over here. So if I would have done the retrograde burn here, then I would have lowered that side of my orbit. One option would be, if you really wanted to for some strange reason, you could orbit all the way around to this node and then lower that side. But time is not on our side, because we've only got 5 hours and 43 minutes, and actually, since the clock is ticking, we've only got 5 hours and 20 minutes left to rescue the vessel. So I'm picking the first node that I came up to. So I want to get right up to the node, so I've still got a few more seconds to wait. Good, more time ahead. I'm just waiting until this crosses right over. Maybe we'll start just a second early. That way we can balance the burn. Now what I want to do is just watch my PEA. And I want to bring my PEA down to, let's say, somewhere between 72 and 75 kilometers, somewhere in that range. Let's go for 74.
translation.
That's pretty good right there. Okay, so now I'm here at the descending node, but my altitude is obviously, still 362 kilometers. I'm nowhere near the atmosphere, so I need to warp time ahead until I get over to this point. Let me start paying attention to the altitude now. I'm getting down to 140 kilometers. That's not too far away from where the atmosphere will become an issue.
Rotation.
So let's go ahead and rotate prograde now. And since I'm coming up to the ascending node, I know that, just one moment, I know that I would, if I were going to be doing a main engine burn, I would be in the anti-normal position. I would be doing orbit minus. So that means I would be burning with the vessel facing that way. So in order to do this atmospheric surfing method, I want to rotate my vessel this way so that these negative numbers are facing up. So I want to be in this position. Actually, I need to close the nose cone. I forgot about it. Good thing I looked outside. Because as I come down here and get into the atmosphere, my vessel has a natural lift in the upright position, so it's going to be pulling me this way. It's going to be pulling me up. So that's towards the negative, and that's what I want since I'm coming up to the ascending node. If I were coming around to the descending node, I would want to be rotated the other direction. So let me turn off the APU for now. And I'm going to bring up map MFD over here. Track our position, zoom in a couple of times, and here in a little bit, once we get down into the atmosphere, you'll be able to see the green line that's our orbit will start to get closer to the yellow line, which represents the orbit of the other XR2. And I'm also going to bring up one external MFD because I would need to keep track. I need to watch my vertical speed and my vertical acceleration. Okay, let's go forward a little bit further. We still have a little ways to go until we're going to be in the atmosphere. And I don't think the radiator is going to be an issue, so I'm just going to leave it extended.
Mach 27 plus.
Okay, I'm not too far away from the point where the atmosphere is going to start affecting the vessel. So I'm going to turn the APU on, and I'm going to put in the maximum amount of elevator trim. And of course that's going to pull the vessel, it's going to pitch the vessel up. And what I want is a 15-degree angle of attack. And I'm not going to get that with just elevator trim. So I'm going to add in a little bit of center of gravity shift as well. And I don't know exactly how much center of gravity shift I need, so I'm going to start with that number, and then I'll add or subtract center of gravity shift as needed. But for now I can turn off the APU, and I can just wait for the vessel to settle. You can see here the angle of attack's going up. And right now it's gone past 15 degrees, but it's probably going to settle back down most likely. Yeah, you can see now it's starting to go the other direction. And what I can do to help it settle is just maybe kill rotate once, and that'll stop it from oscillating so much. And it turns out that 15 degrees is the sweet spot. If you have an angle of attack higher than 15 degrees, then your rate actually will not be as good as it would be at 15 degrees. And of course, if you're any lower than 15 degrees angle of attack, then you're not getting enough lift. So I'm just waiting for that to settle. I'm going to kill rotate again. Looks like we've got pretty close to the amount of center of gravity shift that we need. And now I'm waiting for the vessel to get down to that point, you know, the periapsis, the 74 kilometers. But you can see that our rate is already negative 0.05, and our relative inclination is already coming down. So we are surfing, quote unquote, the atmosphere at the moment. And I can't do much here in the way of time acceleration, so we're just going to ride this out. And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to rest my voice for a moment, because I have all these throat problems and my throat's already getting stressed. So I'm just going to not talk for a moment, and we're just going to watch things develop. So just give me a couple minutes here. I can also show here in orbit MFD what's happening to our energy. You can see we are over here at periapsis, and you can see our apoapsis is coming down, so the opposite side of our orbit is coming down, and that's because we're losing energy. And you can see here our acceleration is negative 0.34, and it's going up, and it'll continue to go up until we reach periapsis. So we are going to obviously require a little bit of a main engine burn to bring our orbital energy back up, but we'll get to that point here in a little bit. We've still got a little ways to go until periapsis. The rate is continuing to increase, which means our relative inclination is continuing to go down at an ever increasing rate. That's good. And if we look at map MFD, we can see our orbital planes slowly getting closer together. It's fairly subtle. It kind of helps if you look every 5 or 10 minutes instead of if you watch it in real time, you don't notice the movement. Okay, we're getting really close to periapsis. So now what I want to do is rotate out a little bit and watch my vertical speed. I actually should have done this earlier.
26.
My vertical acceleration is positive, so that means my vertical speed is going up. It's getting closer to 0. That's what I want. My rate is still going, it's increasing. Now that I'm getting close to 0 on the vertical speed, I'm going to roll closer to center position here. Just watching the vertical speed, I want it to get to about 0. Angle of attack's holding right there at 15 degrees, so we've got the right amount of center of gravity shift. And I'll show you actually, if you watch my rate, if I pitch up a little bit, I go from 15 to say 17, 18. Notice that my rate's actually going down, even though I'm pitching up more. So that's why 15 degrees angle of attack is the best. And obviously if I pitch down, it would also decrease the actual rate. I'm starting to climb a little bit. I'm going to roll to the right just a tad, bring my vertical acceleration down, which will bring the vertical speed down. And I just have to ride this out. I may not get all of the relative inclination change in this one pass. I may have to go around to the descending node to get the rest of it. But we've already improved our relative inclination by about 10 degrees. Gonna roll to the left just a little bit. My vertical speed's gone negative. Actually, with the way this is going, I may very well get all of this rate, or all of this relative inclination correction in one pass. Just doing a little bit more left roll. My vertical acceleration, getting it to positive so the vertical speed will increase a little bit. Get closer to 0, that is. Do a little bit more left roll.
Mach 25.
Okay, we are right dead center at the ascending node right now, which means we're crossing the plane. Right there you can see it. And you can see how close these two lines are getting now. Let me pay attention to the vertical speed. It's, you do a little more left roll. And if this gets really low, but it doesn't get, to exactly 0, then it's not going to be worth going over to the descending node and doing this again. If this gets really low, then we'll just do a standard amount, we'll just do a standard align plane correction to get the last little bit. It would be cheaper to do that than it would be to try to lower ourselves down into the atmosphere on that side. And it looks like that's going to be the case because this is coming down really quickly. So we got it all in one pass. A little more left roll. And anytime I wanted to, I can start adding in a little bit of main engine to start raising or to start increasing my orbital energy. I can do that now if I want. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of main engine. A little bit more, and basically I'm just raising the other side of my orbit. I'm increasing my velocity, adding in some energy. This has to be done at some point. Doesn't necessarily have to be done right now, but I'm just doing it right now just to show.
Mach 25.
Because the periapsis got all the way down to negative 600. I'm going to go ahead and kill the main engines for now and pay attention to what's going on over here. We're going to need to roll out. Right about now. Start rolling out. And what I want to do is turn on the APU and recenter the center of gravity. And set the nose trim to 0, or the elevator trim.
Information. APU fuel 80%.
And you can see the rate went positive. So I just want to get back to the center position here. Okay, now
Mach 26.
with the relative inclination being as low as it is, I'm certain that I could just go ahead and raise my orbit now. But what I'll do is since I'm still low in the atmosphere, I'll go ahead and use... I'm really debating if I want to do this because it's such a low number already.
APU running.
It's not worth it. What I'm going to do is when I get over to the descending node, I'm just going to do a regular plane alignment because it's at this number, it becomes not worth trying to do the atmospheric stuff. But you can see we got 21 point something degrees worth of plane change there at the ascending node. Okay, so now my altitude is 87 kilometers and climbing a bit. So I'm going to turn the APU off. I'm going to go over to apoapsis. And add in the amount of energy that's necessary to circularize the orbit.
Mach 26.
Okay, coming up to apoapsis here and not very long. Don't really need surface MFD anymore, so I'll bring the map up. You can see how close the planes are at this point. Okay, I'm going to go to prograde. Okay. Now I'm going to circularize. Okay, there we have that. Now, I'll just come around to the descending node and get that last little bit of relative inclination. doesn't have to be all the way down to 0, by the way. I don't know the calculation off the top of my head, but Dimitris was telling me that if you get this relative inclination down to 0.5 or lower, then your difference in velocity by the time you rendezvous is only like 50 or 60 meters per second. So it doesn't have to be all the way down to 0. But since we are coming up to the descending node, I'll go ahead and 0 it out. If it was a little bit lower, I would just stay in the prograde position and use linear translation, but since it's 0.83, I'm going to go ahead and go orbit normal to get the last little bit of it. Okay, this is, by the way, certainly good enough, but as long as I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and 0 it out. Close to. Well, there we go. That's certainly good enough. And you can see here in MapMFD that our planes are now aligned, and we're behind the XR2, or the other XR2, and we're below it, so we're going to catch up to it in fairly short order. Okay, so that is going to be the end of part 1 of this XR2 rescue mission. We've got our plane aligned, and we use the atmosphere to get over 20 degrees worth of plane alignment that didn't cost us hardly any fuel. So in the next part, we will rendezvous, and then from there we'll go on to rescue the other XR2. If you have any questions about this part of the video, go ahead and leave your questions down below. And as always, if you like the video, leave me a comment, and I will see you in the next part.